Hello, Liana Beattie again, and welcome to this video, and welcome back to my channel. In this first video on symbiotic autoethnography that you can see on that slide, I defined what symbiotic autoethnography is and also briefly described its 7 features as applicable to autoethnographic research. So, in this video, I will be answering some of your questions that I have received in response to my first video. And to keep the timing of this video within reasonable time, I will be answering only 2 of your questions, but please keep them coming as I intend to upload a series of videos based on your questions and comments in relation to symbiotic approach and also autoethnographic research in general. So here are the questions that I'm going to address today. The first one is, how do I know that autoethnography is the best approach to my research project? And the second one that I received from you is, how do I collect data for my autoethnography? So let's start with the first question. How do I know that autoethnography is the best approach to my research project? And this is probably the most common question that my students ask. And generally, it also is associated with comments such as, I have a diary from my school teaching practice. Can this be an autoethnography? Or I have notes and photos from my visit to a research conference. Can I turn this into autoethnography? My simple answer to this kind of questions is no. Your notes, your diaries, photos, letters, memories, etc., they are not autoethnographies. Well, to expand on my answer, I really have to go back to the very roots of what autoethnography actually is. As the word autoethnography suggests, this approach is closely associated with ethnography, which is a field of anthropology which focuses on exploring cultural practices, behaviors of the participants in their natural environments. Now, ethnographic studies spread their roots at the beginning of the 20th century, and they were mostly associated with examining remote cultural groups and populations. The concept of ethnography presents an important aspect within the term autoethnography, as you can see from looking just at the word, linking that significance of cultural context back to traditions of these early anthropological investigations. So, the main point I would like to make is, I'd like to emphasize here that autoethnography, as the word itself suggests, is a fusion of 3 interrelated components: auto, ethno, and graphy. So your autoethnographic projects must use your personal experience, which is auto, to describe, interpret, and represent in writing, graphy, beliefs, practices, and identities associated with a specific cultural phenomena, which is ethno. So from this statement, you can see that the blend of personal and cultural represents almost the hallmark of autoethnography as an approach to a qualitative inquiry. So in my view, autoethnography is a written piece of work that explores the cultural phenomenon through personal, subjective experiences of that phenomena. And yet, some researchers might disagree with me, as there are currently many other forms of autoethnography appearing in the field, including dance, musical performances, poetic presentations, and many other forms, which I personally would not describe as autoethnography, since in my view they lack the essential element of graphy in their projects. So going back to the original question, how do you know whether autoethnography is the best approach to your research project? You really need to ask yourself a question on whether you are trying to explore a specific cultural phenomenon rather than thinking about your experience as a starting point for your project. So the first step in your thinking would be to ask yourself a question. Which cultural phenomena am I interested in exploring? And this, of course, can be anything from exploring a culture of teaching phonics to a culture of school management, from culture of working with your project supervisor to a culture of promoting sustainability in your organization. Absolutely anything. So the concept of culture is used here in a broader sense that embraces any ideas, customs, social behaviors of a particular person, groups of people, or a society. So once you have decided on which specific cultural phenomena you're planning to explore, the next question for you would be to ask, have I got any unique or significant experiences of that cultural phenomena that can contribute to the current debates in the field about this cultural phenomena? In simple terms, you will be asking yourself a question, is this topic worth researching? And have I got significant experiences of that particular field? First of all, of course, you need to start reading around the subject to try to find out whether there are any ongoing debates in the field about this cultural phenomena, or whether there are any controversies about that phenomena. So essentially, you will be aiming at contributing something to the existing debates, whether it's theoretically, practically, or methodologically. These initial explorations would help you position your project in the relevant research field and would enable you to provide a critical justification for your choice, as well as further critical interpretation. For example, you might enjoy eating marshmallows, but your reflection on your experience of eating marshmallows will not be considered autoethnography, since first, you won't be able to answer the question, why is this worth researching? And second, even if you manage to come up with an answer, you will not be able to critically justify it due to this simple lack of complete absence of research in relation to your subject. So to summarize, in order to make a decision on whether autoethnography is a suitable approach to your research, you need to answer yes to both questions. Do I know which cultural phenomena am I going to explore? And do I have significant experience of that phenomena that are worth exploring? Now, let's move on to the next question. By the way, you can still ask me questions in relation to the first question. So if you want me to expand on it, I will be able to do it in my next video if there are sufficient comments and questions in relation to that. But in terms of the second one, how do I collect data for my autoethnography? Well, unquestionably, at the heart of any type of research lies the process of collecting data. Traditional methods of data collection in qualitative research predominantly involve interacting, interviewing, or asynchronous surveying of participants, followed by subsequent analysis of the spoken or written responses. Now, in autoethnography, and also specifically in symbiotic autoethnography, data is extracted from the researcher's own spatio-temporal embodied experiences of a cultural phenomena under study. This means that conventional methods of data collection need to be reconsidered. effort in the context of symbiotic autoethnography, with a focus on what I call discerning rather than collecting data. Or sometimes I refer to it as generating data. But I think discerning suits better the process of dealing with data in autoethnography. And that is where discerning is understood as a process of imaginative and creative techniques of recognizing relevant and potentially valuable fragments of your experiences within this complex fabric of the researcher's life journey that could potentially contribute to a better understanding of the phenomena under study that you have chosen. So the process of discerning data requires a great deal of rigor to ensure that the data is meaningful, manageable, and that it bears well-defined internal coherence with the aims and objectives of your autoethnographic inquiry. And your efforts really need to focus on creating what Saldana explained as, or called as, through line. Through line in the multidimensional data that is a strand that provides a kind of symbiotic connection between the fragments of data, aiding to the process of constructing your autoethnographic narrative. And this process, of course, offers limitless possibilities in the choice of data sources, making it possible to discern data that is not obtainable through more traditional ways of data collection. And yet, it also brings about the challenges of circumscribing a specific selection of data from the multiplicity of field nodes that might include, but are not limited to, your memories, feelings, experiences, your dreams, photographs, various memorabilia, records of interviews with participants, entries from reflexive diaries and ordinary diaries, as well as your reflections on relevant literature and theoretical perspectives. So the potential pool of opportunities for discerning data can be endless, because in autoethnography, everything becomes data. I don't want to talk about this yet, because this is the theme of my next video. But going back to this question, also autoethnographic reports are presented in a form of a personal narrative. They do not consist solely of the researcher's opinions, but they are supported by other data that can confirm or triangulate those opinions using such sources of data as participant observation, interviewing, gathering documents, artifacts, literature, theoretical assumptions. And yet, in the context, if we talk specifically about symbiotic approach, researchers need to be mindful of relying too heavily on traditional ways of collecting and selecting data, given the idea that these methods rarely reflect the complexity of the cultural phenomena under study, which you have personal experience of. In symbiotic approach, the ways of discerning the data are not distinctly prescribed, but instead they almost emerge gradually from the body of researchers' interaction with this cultural phenomena under study. And some way, and I put this in my thesis actually, they resemble Michelangelo's sculpturing technique of gradually revealing the figure from the rock, rather as if it was slowly emerging from the surface of a vessel of water. So in this way, the process of discerning the data in symbiotic autoethnography comes closer to the perception of the world, as far from being unitary and static phenomena untainted by experience, but in reality it's completely fluid. So this position really challenges commonly accepted appreciation of established methods of data collection, whilst giving the researchers the freedom to engage in the interpretation of data as a fluid, multifaceted concept that has the capacity to make use of ruptured realities, fragmented thoughts, tangled emotions, disorientated bodily experiences. As argued by Elizabeth St. Pierre, if we wish to engage in the risky research practice of redescribing the world, we need to reject the existing categories and think differently about the word data, and to find a different strategy of sense-making that can embrace emotional data, dream data, sensual data. And yet, despite our attempts to somehow streamline the process of discerning data, putting these emotions on paper, the fragments of data always leak into each other. It's very difficult sometimes to separate one set of data from another set of data in autoethnography, because how do you separate rational from emotional, temporal with spatial, personal and political, creating a symbiosis of fluid and intertwining data fragments? Well, in such complex symbiosis of data, words, both written and spoken, they lose their dominance, giving way to memories, emotions, dreams, feelings, sounds, and even silences. So acknowledging this complexity, along with recognizing the kind of ineptness of language instruments for communicating evocative nuances of the data, they present one of the key tasks of autoethnographers in the context of autoethnographic approach and symbiotic approach. So discerning words alone is not sufficient for symbiotic autoethnography, as pauses, laughs, silences are equally significant in representing researchers' experiences, since the former exemplify different ways of perceiving the world available to human beings, which really go beyond the limitations of language instruments. But I guess that takes my discussion towards another aspect of autoethnography related to the question, what is data in autoethnographic research? And that is really the question I'm going to cover in my next video. So I hope you found this video useful. So please continue to message me and provide comments and questions so that I can answer this in my next videos. And thank you again for listening, and I hope to see you again soon on my channel. If you're here for the first time and if you want to find out more, please subscribe to this channel and also follow me on Twitter. So thank you again for watching, and good luck with your autoethnographic research. Goodbye.